So good evening, everyone, and we welcome you once again to another episode of a CAHO webinar, which is on facility management of hospitals. If we look at the non-conformities that we get during accreditation, then the facility management ones are extremely important, and they are the ones where people tend to falter. So we have requested Col.Dr. SKM Rao, who is the Senior Vice President Operations South of Columbia Asia Hospitals, a very senior member of the Accreditation Committee, who has been a very, very instrumental person in fact, enlightening all of us regarding some of the aspects of the facility management. So over to you, Colonel SKM Rao, to please go through this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, Dr. Vijay, to give me an opportunity to present myself on facility management in hospitals. So facility management, as Dr. Vijay has already brought out, is an important, very, very important topic in terms of running the hospitals, not only from NABH and accreditation point of view, but also from day-to-day running of the hospitals also is a very important topic. So I will cover my topic. Next slide, sir. Cover my topic under statutory requirements, then various facilities which are there in the facility, that is DG sets, UPS, transformer, STP, RO water plant, boilers, fire protection detection, which is a very important aspect. Next, please. So many of the components of this are well known to you. It is like a factory. Hospital is like a factory in which a lot of industrial aspects like manifold room, compressors, vacuum pumps, pump room for pumping the water for drinking as well as for fire purposes, water tanks, electrical panels, lifts, dumb waiters, HVAC, that is your air conditioning aspect, then air handling units, which are part and parcel of HVAC, mortuary, and many more other components. Next, please. Next, sir. So in the statutory requirements, I have also received one of the questions from one of the participants about building completion. So building completion is the first portion from where we start. That is also called OC by some of the states. But is it basically building completion, which allows people to enter into a particular building, and it also says that the building is structurally sound for occupation by the hospital, by the patients, and by the occupants like doctors and staff. So building completion is an important aspect. Many of you must have faced this, that many of the old buildings which were constructed for hospitals do not have this OC in many of the states. But now in NABH, we have taken a particular decision in which even if the OC is not in hand, but they are registered with the state government's health authority. For example, in Bombay, there is a Bombay Nursing Home Act. In Bengal, there is a West Bengal Clinical Establishment Act. In Delhi also, similar clinical establishment acts are there, under which the healthcare organizations are being registered, or they are registered through district health officer also in many places. So that is acceptable because that is also an agency which permits the hospitals to run their operations. Then approved layouts is another important aspect, that the government also approves these layouts of every floor and every aspect, like basements, then you have terraces. It gives us an indication that if any hospital or any facility has created an unauthorized construction which may hamper in terms of fire fighting activities, as well as it may hamper your routine clinical activities also. Then there is electrical safety certificate, which is again very important aspect, whether it is for the your generator set or for running your regular electrical aspects like your various wires, connections, MCPs, all those aspects come under electrical safety. So electrical safety, electrical inspector, they come and inspect the building for electrical safety and certify a particular hospital. Then we have very important aspect called Fire NOC. All of you are aware that many of the hospitals do not possess Fire NOC. There are multiple reasons to it. As we go along in the presentation, I will explain that what are the requirements under the fire fighting in terms of National Building Code and in terms of various states who have created different set of framework for giving Fire NOC, or there is another certificate which is called as Fire Inspection Certificate. So many of the states actually are carrying out fire inspection only and not giving Fire NOC as such. But every year, fire inspection is carried out. Environment clearance of DG set, again, this is a part of Pollution Control Board, which gives us the environment clearance for generator sets. Diesel storage, nowadays I do not see any of the hospitals storing very high quantities of diesel, because on site you can store up to 2,500 liters of diesel and not beyond that. But individually in the storage tanks, you can store up to 1,000 liters. That is attached with your generator sets also. All the generator sets come with this storage capacity only, and they do not exceed this storage capacity, keeping in view the statutory requirements. Boilers, most of the hospitals have actually abandoned boilers because there is actually no need of boiler, because earlier boiler was required due to a requirement of laundry in the hospital. But nowadays everybody has outsourced this laundry, and so most of the hospitals have only water calorifiers and not the boilers. And even government permits the use of small boilers in the CSSD for your sterilization equipment. So boiler license is not that much a problem, but if boiler is there on site, then the boiler license has to be obtained from explosive authority. Water harvesting, this is now become compulsory in many of the states, water harvesting as a part of construction. But those which are old buildings also have to have some water harvesting pits as per requirement and as per requirement of a local authorities. Permission of bore wells, as you know that the groundwater reserve is slowly depleting, and many of the metros, especially Delhi and various others, are not allowing any more bore wells to be dug without the permission of groundwater authority. Next, sir. So now we also have from Pollution Control Board authorization for water, air, hazardous substances and biomedical waste disposal. This is an important statutory requirement which is part and parcel of facility management. Then we have now some changes in liquid oxygen tank clearance. Earlier, nobody used to obtain clearance for capacity less than 1,000 liter capacity of liquid oxygen tank, but now it is compulsory to obtain liquid oxygen tank permission for that from high explosive authorities in the Nagpur. All of you, I am sure, are aware that Nagpur is the only place where this particular authority exists, and which also clears all your LNGs as well as all your liquefied petroleum gas installations also. So this is a new requirement. I thought I will bring out this specifically because many of you may not be aware about this. The distance from the building for liquid oxygen tank is required to be at least 6 meters away and 9 meters height, 15 meters if you want 2 tanks of liquid oxygen. Alternate source, nowadays companies are planning, because many of the old buildings cannot, whatever they do, they will not be able to get that 6 meter distance from the building for liquid oxygen tank and that 9 meter height, because they are located in such a manner. So many of the companies have an innovative solution has been produced, which is called manifold cylinder pallet, which has multiple cylinders built in line arrangement, whereby one after another cylinder can be used through this machine. It contains approximately 25 cylinders, almost 142 cubic meter of gas, which is a day's requirement, I would say, for a small hospital. But for a bigger hospital, you may require 3 pallets like this per day. Only problem with this pallet is that you have to put it through a crane because it's a very heavy. You can imagine 25 cylinders if have to be brought inside. Lift license, it is compulsory in almost all the states which I have visited for NABH accreditation, except one odd state where lift license is not compulsory, and it is a lifetime lift license which is given. Now, I will come to now the very important topic, that is firefighting or fire guidelines or fire NOC or fire inspection, whatever you call. You can see on your view file in the slides, we have distinct categories of hospital. Distinct categories of hospital I mean by the height of the building. Height of the building, if it is less than 15 meters, normally fire departments do not issue any fire NOC for such buildings. But there is a requirement of fire inspection. That means the basic things are available. For example, you can see in front that you have a dry riser, wet riser, then you have sprinklers. All these are recommended by fire authorities also. And you require an underground static tank as well as a tank on the terrace. So different categories have been identified. 15 meters, in that again, if the building's length is more than 1000 square meter, then there are slightly different regulations. Then there is also a category which is from 15 meters to 24 meters. And there is a category which is above 24 meters, that high-rise buildings, which has multiple requirement. But here do not go by only capacities which have been given, that is 1,50,000 for underground tank and 20,000. That is not sufficient if it is a 200 plus beds building. Obviously, because requirements of such type of building will be higher. But these are minimum requirements which have been prescribed by authorities. Next, sir. So as far as fire guide continues, there, if you have a building which is 500 square meters on one floor, then you have to have 2 staircases, which is compulsory, and the staircase must open in the open. Directly it should open outside, one of them, and one of them can be enclosed. So also now requirement under new rules is also that you need to have a positive pressure in the staircase so that the smoke from the building does not enter the staircase, because through this only you take out, the evacuation is taking place. That's why you cannot have a staircase which is not positively pressured. So for positive pressure, you have to have the blowers which are created in this area at the time of construction, or it can be retrofitted also. And you can see also that the 2-hour fire rating is also now compulsory. And all the air handling units must have separate connections. They cannot be connected with each other. Also, the ventilation ducts which are there must have a fire damper. That means as soon as the smoke enters into that, it gets closed automatically. And it should be of non-combustible material. Next, sir. Next, please. So emergency lighting is also compulsory in these fire staircases. Fire hydrants, all of you are aware. And also you need to have 6 meters of clear space around the hospital building for free movement of fire tenders. In fact, nowadays for new construction, fire department doesn't give permission for if the adjoining areas are also very, very congested and there is no space for them to enter from outside. So they need either space inside the hospital complex of 6 meters or immediately outside the hospital, 6 meters clear space. Next, please. I can also see some of the participants are raising some questions. I think I will take all the questions at the end, one by one, which I will. Yes, sir.
Okay, I think that will be a good idea. We'll put you all the questions relating to the different things. Yeah. Okay.
Right. So corridor width, you can see on the view foil that is 2.4 meter, as well as the fire staircases, it is requirement is of 2 meter in width. This is all as per the National Building Code. There is a fire lift requirement if it is a multi-storied building, and fire tower requirement or a refuge area requirement, which is for a 24 meter height building. Next, sir. So all of you are aware during NABH accreditation process, the assessors do take a facility round in detail. Some of the components of the facility round are all your signages, which includes your fire signages, how to escape, where are the escape routes. At the same time, also signages like no smoking or other patient safety related signages, and what are the displays which are there. Like in the every room, we need to have a fire escape route. Most of the times in enclosed spaces which have been constructed later on for ad hoc arrangements like laboratories and other things which are created below the basement, etc., are totally enclosed spaces. There also you need to have fire related signage. Basement, rooftop, all of them are under the inspection. Now I will move on to water management. So water management is a very important aspect in any of the buildings, including our hospitals. In our hospitals, we need safe and potable water round the clock. We also need RO water. We also need water for cleaning, water for flushing. All these aspects we can take care through STP's effluent water which comes out. That can also be reused in the toilets. Total consumption of water as per the norms is around 400 to 450 liters per day per bed. This is a general assumption, but it does not include water which is used in the gardens, water which is used for various other requirements of cleaning, etc. But overall, a general requirement is around 450 liters per day per bed. And total supply of water, we have to note down. We must understand that how much is it sufficient for the hospital or not. The hardness prescribed by ISO 10500 is around 90 to 120 ppm, and the free chlorine which should be tested on daily basis is 0.1 to 0.2 ppm ideally. As if it is the free chlorine is more, then also it is a problematic, because all your filters etc. will get clogged. They will deteriorate very fast because chlorine itself will kill these filters. Various alternative sources nowadays, it's almost become compulsory in metro cities and various other cities also, where tanker water we are getting. So we must get this tanker water tested quite often. So prescribed thing for testing is generally quarterly for biological testing, monthly for endotoxin tests, and also physical parameters of the water. For example, hardness, as I have already said, plus any other chloramines, etc. All those aspects need to be checked at least quarterly. Schedule of cleaning of water tanks also must be prescribed. As prescribed by NABH, it is 6 monthly, but it can be more frequent in case there is a requirement of water tanks to be cleaned. So testing for hardness daily, testing for residual chlorine daily. This task must be understood. So another very important installation is RO plant. In RO plant, I have seen that normally people don't check the pH, which is a very important aspect. In many of the hospitals, even the dialysis technicians are also not very much aware that pH has to be checked on daily basis, and there is a need to correct this pH, because if it is acidotic, then again patients face problem. If it is towards the alkaline side, again patients will face problem. So TDS, conductivity, and pH is compulsory in RO water. Many of the RO water plants are coming with online pH as well as online TDS, which comes as a display. TDS, if it is less than 20 ppm, it is good. The pH should be around range of 6.8 to 7.2. Microbiological testing is very, very important for RO plant as well as for dialysis. Endotoxin, we have said, as per European Union standards also, as far as Indian standards are also concerned, every month we need to do endotoxin test. Ozonator is an optional requirement. If it is there, it is good for the plant. Even if it is not there, it is not compulsory under NABH also. No, there should not be any dead ends, blind loops. All lines should be regularly inspected and they need to be cleaned appropriately. Next, sir. So these are the discharge standards which are there for STP water. I have just highlighted, but friends, on 19th of October, we have received a notification from Government of India that these standards now have undergone change and have become more strict in terms of, especially BOD. I have mentioned here 30 milligrams per liter, whereas it has become less than 20 milligram per liter, especially in the metro cities. And also total suspended solids have gone less than 50 milligram per liter, whereas the earlier capacity was 100 milligram per liter, as you can see yourself. So some of the standards are becoming stricter, but the implementation of STP water discharge criteria as fresh one is up to 2019, and they have given all old hospitals 5 years to comply with the standards. Next, sir. So now I'll come to another important topic of medical gases: vacuum, compressed air. These are again always, generally you will find them in the basement and or in the adjoining area of the hospital or behind the hospital or on the sides of the hospital, and generally are neglected because safety requirements, which are very, very important requirements, are to be maintained from patient safety point of view. I have mentioned specifically auto mode. Most of them are not in auto mode. Manually, they have to be controlled. So in oxygen, if you see, we have to have a right bank, left bank, and emergency bank. Similarly, in nitrous oxide, we have to have right bank, left bank, and emergency bank. Most of the hospitals you will find, they will cut corners in this also. They will not deploy these banks with the correct line pressure, and which can be dangerous for the patients, and especially those which are controlled directly through the central manifold. For an alternative of central manifold, now we have a liquid oxygen tanks. As I have already shown, liquid oxygen tank regulations have changed. So even less than 1000 liter, you have to take permission. Also, some of the alternatives which have come up, I have shown that the pallets have started coming in the hospital. The area for compressed gas and vacuum has to be physically separated from the manifold. And many of the hospitals have not complied with this, but slowly after NABH inspection and all, I think they are undergoing changes. This is purely from safety point of view. Again, compressed air, we have specified under NABH guidelines also that it should be checked every year. It should be free of carbon monoxide, free of humidity. That's why we have put dryers there. Many times what happens is dryers are not cleaned properly, they get neglected, and you will start getting water in the ventilators, and patients will feel very uncomfortable. So this is compressed air also. Safety is of paramount importance, and preventive maintenance of all these facilities is a must. Certificate for transportation of medical gas cylinders is generally given by the transporters, and they are all authorized transporters. Liquid oxygen permission, I have already mentioned. Next, sir. Can we go to next? Yeah. So there is a lot of confusion about medical gas pipeline color coding. I would like to reiterate here that you can put HTM color coding or NFPA color coding or ISO color coding, which is mentioned in your slide, this is an IS color coding, but you can follow HTM, but it should be consistent. It should not happen that in one place you are following IS, in another place you are following HTM because your vendor changed and there is no marking of direction of airflow. how air is moving, or how oxygen is moving, or how nitrous oxide is moving. And in the exposed areas, wherever you are doing inspections, there at least the color coding should be an appropriate. All gas walls as well as every floor-wise walls have to be monitored with the gas alarm system. Next, sir. So now I come to DG sets and UPS, again an important installation in the hospitals. This is an alternative supply of power, all of you are aware, and this is required at least for critical areas. DG sets in smaller hospital, people don't want to put a higher capacity, which is all right, but at the same time, the DG sets must cover all the critical areas where the active patient treatment is going on. Maybe you can cut corners with the outpatient departments or various other departments which are back-end departments, but not with the ICU, with the operation theater, with various critical areas where you are doing an intervention like cath lab, etc. So this has to be of that much capacity. Noise as well as the exhaust which goes up, that has to be checked regularly. Noise level, there is a binding by the government again, as well as diesel storage. I have already mentioned for the license for diesel storage. There is another license which is involved for reused oil. The oil which is used in the DG sets, those have to be recycled and cannot be thrown in the garbage, cannot be thrown in general, or cannot be put it into the drainage. It has to be recycled back as per Government of India guidelines. Normally, you should not use any other diesel apart from ULS diesel or a speed diesel, because that spoils the generator completely. Then you have preventive maintenance requirements for the DG sets. For example, daily there should be a A check. Then at 300 hours there should be a B check. C check is required at 1000 hours and D check is required at 5000 hours. This has its own components. For example, B check will involve battery checking, then it involves your motors, etc. Those checkings, the details are generally known to the engineers that what is the B check, and most of them are being maintained by the companies involved who are providing you with the DG sets. So schedule and the test record of test runs must be maintained. Nowadays, electricity goes almost in every city, so there is no need of maintaining separate records because every day there is a shutdown. So automatically DG sets get checked. But one aspect gets always missed is there is another DG set for the fire engine also. That fire engine DG set must be also checked regularly. In terms of UPS, I have made a small checklist which is in the next slide. Next, sir. So this is a UPS checklist. Again, there have been many incidents in front of me when I have visited the hospitals, as well as it has come in the news about the fire accident. Major culprit is found to be UPSs, which undergo a short circuit, and there is always I won't name any hospital in particular, but 2 or 3 hospitals which came in limelight were all UPS fires, where UPS has undergone short circuit and then the batteries started blasting one after another and the fire started going up and the smoke went inside the hospital building all over. So all UPS systems have to be checked on a daily basis. The most important thing is the batteries have to be checked. Batteries have to be now, as per Government of India regulation, have to be separated from the UPS physically. So there has to be a barrier. It must be maintained under air conditioning, that is 22 to 24 degree centigrade, the UPS, and the batteries have to be checked periodically. Actual life is 3 years, but most of our hospitals would be continue to use that beyond 3 years. But one thing one must notice is the puffing of the batteries. The moment battery starts puffing, that means its life is gone and it can blast anytime if it is used again and again. Next, sir. So now I come to the final important topic, that is HVAC, and most of the NCs or PCs, whatever you may call, are coming from HVAC background, whether it is for operation theater, whether it is for isolation room, So I will not go into the micro details. NABH operation theater guidelines are available to you free on the website, and the latest guidelines are also available to you, to all of you online, which have to be followed by accredited hospitals as well as those who are undergoing accreditation. So next, please, sir. So I will dwell upon these parameters which are important: air velocity, air changes, temperature, humidity, pressure relationships, and air filter. These are most important criteria. So I will briefly touch upon each one of them. Next, sir. So airflow should be unidirectional and downwards. It does not mention specifically laminar flow. Please do not misunderstand this particular wording. This has been designed specifically. Everywhere you need not insist on laminar flow. But generally, if it is coming on to the operation table, that is acceptable. So velocity also we have changed in the revised guidelines. If you can see, 25 to 35 CFM per square feet. Repeat, per square feet. Earlier guidelines were 70 to 90 feet per minute, which is almost similar to what 25 to 35 CFM per square feet comes, because if it is through the plenum, it comes. Minimum size of the plenum should be covering the operation table as such, 1 feet on each side. This has been mentioned specifically in our guidelines also. Fresh air changes. This is a change from the previous guidelines. Positive pressure, again, has been, the limits have been brought down. Design humidity levels also we have brought down to 20 degrees, up to 20 degrees. There's no harm in having 20 degrees minimum also. Design temperature has been rationalized in these guidelines. Individual temperature control has been made compulsory in each OT, temperature as well as humidity. So there has to be a sensor or monitors which have to be placed in each OT. Another very important aspect which generally nobody follows, very few hospitals they follow, is the VFD, variable frequency drive, which means that you are allowing the blower to be on all the time. And this actually increases the expenditure. That's why most of us, they shut down the OT-AHU completely. But whereas they need to put it in the sleep mode, whereby the blower will always be on. Next, please. So this is just a sample just to show you that this is an operation theater air handling unit. You can see different compartments in this: pre-filter section, then the filter section is there, and motor and blower section is there. These are the three essential components of any AHU. Wherever you go for inspection or within your hospital also, you can open and see yourself that how it functions. The motor has to be of a particular capacity, then only it can have a blower designed to work with that motor. Pre-filter section will have a crude filter which will filter the incoming air, and then the back filter section which is micro V filter. And the HEPA filters generally are placed inside the operation theater. Only in general OT we have permitted that they can be within the AHU also. Next, sir. So another aspect of is called a DX unit, which we had recommended earlier when the World Bank projects started coming in, along with a small AHU, which helps the smaller OTs to survive. It costs around 5 to 6 lakhs per OT expenditure is there. It can actually satisfy all the NABH conditions in terms of air velocity, air changes, everything. So most of the taluk hospitals which are there in Tamil Nadu and Kerala, they have adopted this DX unit design. It gives you a flexibility to achieve temperature changes very fast. Next, sir. So validation of system is more important for us from the point of view of NABH accreditation as well as various other accreditation which are there. So it has to be done as per ISO standards. Temperature, humidity has to be checked. Air particulate count has to be checked. Air change rate. This is all done most of the times by the vendors. So vendors are now well trained because of NABH's presence for such a long time. Every vendor is, I think, trained to do it appropriately. A validation of HEPA filters on 6 monthly basis. Most of them are doing it on yearly basis. So this change has been done in the last edition, which was taken out, that 6-monthly validation should be done for HEPA filters in terms of integrity as well as the particle count. Next, please. So this is just an example just to show you the actual test results given by a vendor for a particular operation theater complex. That is, 3 OTs are there. They have given various values. This is just for your consumption, that it checks your velocity, it checks your particle count at every point, and there are 4 or 5 points which are taken for doing air particulate test, based on which the combined results are taken out. Next, please. So this is again one example. I won't dwell much on this. This is for a detailed calculation. You can you can have this recording and then check it. This is for general purposes. Thank you, sir. Next, please. So this is the ISO class 5, which is a requirement of our modern day OTs, and up to ISO class 6 also we have permitted. So this is basically a particulate count which is there. So the particulate count has to be according to this criteria. Class 100 is also plotted against this, class 100 versus class 1000 OTs, which are American standards. So this is just a grid just to show you that this is the particulate count, that is 3520 particulate count of less than 0.5 microns is what is our standard for ISO class 5 operation theaters. Next, please. So maintenance requirements. This is very important from facility point of view, from our operation managers and quality managers and various other people who are involved. They need to look into this more consistently rather than going into the technical details of AHU. This is very important, that everything has to be maintained appropriately. For example, the pressure drops, then periodic cleaning of filters, pre-filters, 15 days, preventive maintenance of all the parts. This, whether our engineers are doing this appropriately or not, is need to be seen by quality managers. Next, please. Another important aspect is isolation rooms. Generally, people have a lot of misunderstandings about this. This is especially negative isolation room, positive isolation room. These are the two most important isolation rooms which we have. The standard isolation room doesn't require anything apart from a closed door and change of gear for the healthcare worker. So 12 air changes is what is recommended by all the guidelines, whether it is critical care guidelines or ASHRAE guidelines or various other national guidelines which are there. 2 fresh air changes are permitted in this. No need to have full complete fresh air changes. So minus 2.5 or plus 2.5. If it is a positive pressure room, then plus 2.5 is the requirement, minimum requirement. These are all minimum requirements, mind you, friends. It is not the maximum requirements. So many of the times people go and object why it is showing 6, why it is showing 8 pascals. That need not be done, because this is a minimum requirement. If it is going below this, then we should object, saying that it has to be maintained properly. Most of the times the pressure changes are because people do not maintain their exhaust grills appropriately. There's a lot of dust which goes and settles there, and if you clean your exhaust grills, I think everybody can achieve the positive pressure as well as negative pressure which is required. A toilet exhaust should not be mixed with this exhaust. That one must remember. And anti-room needs to have a different air changes. But these are all ideal requirement. Another requirement which has been added by NABH specifically is to monitor the pressure differential through a gauge. So you must have seen now that most of the hospitals are putting gauges for this, because it is pointless testing at one given point of time. So there needs to be a healthcare worker who needs to be aware of these requirements rather than the engineers. Next, please. So what is new? This is important. What is new? Because this is generally, a lot of misunderstanding about this. Fresh air intake for all AHUs. Mind you, again, for all AHUs which are in critical areas. For example, ICUs, operation theaters, endoscopy, at least 3 feet above the roof and 25 feet away from cooling towers and exhaust discharges. Many times what happens is the isolation room exhaust is just very close to fresh air intake of operation theatre, which is not accepted, which is not correct also, because it will lead directly the germ deposition. And discharge or the exhaust should be 10 feet above the roof so that there is no coming back of that discharge to the facility. NICU temperature, generally we should have more than temperature requirements. The humidity requirements need to be higher. 80 degrees RH. It is different from operation theaters RH. ICU changes, 12 air changes is sufficient. Humidity boosters are not needed specifically for ICUs and various other areas. And now ASHRAE also has brought down the requirement of humidity boosters, specifically for operation theaters also. HEPA filter is required at exhaust outlet if exhaust is not on the roof. Many of the multi-story building you must have seen, the isolation rooms are somewhere in the middle of the middle floors. So for them, if they discharge the air also outside, it will again come back to the hospital. So that's why there is a requirement of HEPA filters for such type of isolation rooms which are not exhausting directly onto the roof. So nuclear medicine lab as well as bronchoscopy also needs to have a negative pressure relationship. So these are some of the newer things which I thought I have compiled for your benefit. Thank you very much. Now I will take up questions one by one. Sorry.
Yeah. So I think we can probably try to divide questions under various heads. So let's have questions which may be relating to the statutory requirements. Can we have that?
Yeah. So the first question. Yeah. Can I have the question, please?
Yes.
First question I have actually received through email, that is for the occupation certificate or building completion certificate. So I have already explained that the building completion certificate for old buildings may not be available. I won't say that it is enough efforts have not been done by the hospital authorities, but apart from that, we have accepted now under NABH accreditation process that if the hospital is registered with under Clinical Establishment Act with the health authorities, so that also being a statutory authority, we will accept this as a compliance.
And a part of that question was that sometimes, you know, your biomedical waste certificate or the fire certificate is gone for renewal and it is taking time. Most of the times the accreditation committee is quite understanding of that issue. So long as you have had the original one and you have applied for those certificates well in time, in those instances, I think you are quite okay. And the NABH gives you enough time to report back after the certificate has been received by you.
Yes, sir. One question I could see, somebody has asked a question saying that can OPD, pathology lab and various other things can be in the basement those facilities are legal or not. So this is specific requirement under National Building Code now, especially those buildings which have come up after 2005 or 2006. They needed to be adhering to this standard. But if the local municipal authority has permitted and there is a valid drawing available with the hospital for a particular facility, like somebody has asked OPD, somebody has asked laboratory, if that is a valid drawing is been passed by the local municipal authority, then I think we need not object to such type of thing. But the correct guideline is this, that in basement, except radiotherapy, no other patient care facility is allowed. Storage various utility aspects like DG sets, manifold, these are all permitted by the authority. But only thing is, patient care areas, there has to be a specific permission from local municipal authority. If local municipal authority has no objection, there is no problem from NABH side.
Yes, some of these are anyway. You can say that number of hospitals are not fully complying with the National Building Code and things like that. But as we are progressing in life, you understand that the administration is becoming far stricter. As far as NABH is concerned, we are becoming a little more lenient towards some of these marginal things. But like what Dr. Rao explained, you need to be on the right side, because any of those non-compliances can anyway put you in trouble with a respect to your own authorities.
Yeah, one of the participant has asked that if building is more than 15-meter height but does not have any fire NOC, then what is the stand? So we have again gone back on this and examined at the accreditation committee level and various other levels of the board of NABH also. If a third party can certify, the building is safe for fire, and if they give certain requirements from firefighting point of view, like X number of fire extinguishers or an appropriate fire escape route, then based on that third party's certification, which is allowed by fire department, third party certification, we are permitting the accreditation process to go ahead. So that is the explanation in short.
Yeah. Very soon, in fact, you see, CAHO is coming out with a kind of a software where the hospital will be able to judge itself in terms of its fire safety index. And in that case, once they find that they want to get it certified, we will also have some approved third-party people who can come around and do that inspection for you. So that will be available to you very soon.
Yes, sir. Any other questions?
Pertaining to the, I would say, pertaining to statutory, somebody is asking about compulsory to have valid license for liquid oxygen.
Yes. Now it has become compulsory to have a valid license, even if the capacity is less than 1,000 liter for a bullet, which is placed. But government again is re-examining, because there is no place to have that 6-meter distance. Their point of government is this, that the liquid oxygen tank, the truck which comes, should be able to park in front of the liquid oxygen bullet and able to fill up that. That is their point. That's why they have provision for some space and safety for human beings, that it should not be very close to the hospital. It should be little away from the hospital. That's why these rules have been devised. But now even the older facilities have to comply with this within 5 years, as I said earlier.
Then there is a question that it says, where can we get groundwater permission?
Yeah. So there is a central groundwater board. You can Google about it. You will reach the website. So Central Groundwater Board is the central authority which has delegated these powers to various states. At state level also, similar authorities exist, especially those states where there is a severe water shortage, groundwater shortage. And groundwater is also, most of the times you will find that it is contaminated by either bacteria or by various chemicals. So this authority essentially checks all these things and permits you to have borewell in your premises.
Okay. Is there any other question on statutory requirement? Otherwise, then we move on to I think let's move on to the electricity and the DG sets issues. And or we can start taking now, let me say, the question. There are some questions here. How to, just one second. Let me take it right now from the beginning. It says chlorine level of 0.5 to 0.6 is usually advised for infection prevention purposes. Do you suggest that it is advisable or acceptable? And if so, what are the consequences on the distribution lines?
Yeah, a very appropriate question, I would say. From infection control prevention, whenever there is an outbreak, we generally do a extra dosing of chlorine in the water. But that is only a temporary phase. You should not permanently keep on overdosing the water of the hospital, because there are so many installations which get affected due to extra chlorine. It does kill bacteria, but this is a temporary job. We are supposed to maintain our tanks. We are supposed to maintain all the installations. Cleanliness is of utmost importance. It's not only the chlorine. Chlorine can do a temporary job. It can kill temporarily. Again, the bacteria will surface if you do not permanently clean those places regularly and have your dosing at a low level.
The question is, what is the need to put hermetically sealed doors when positive pressure is maintained in operation theater?
So hermetically sealed doors are for convenience of maintaining a modular OT, but at the same time there are exhaust grills which are also part of hermetically sealed operation theater. So it matches with the requirement of air changes as well as exhaust requirement. Whenever there is an extra pressure, it automatically gets released through these vents. So vents are also part of your hermetically sealed aspects. So it's not compulsory, by the way. It is not compulsory from NABH that you need to have only modular OT or hermetically sealed doors. It is not compulsory. Our requirement is to maintain a positive pressure. So positive pressure, if you can maintain even without having a hermetically sealed operation theater, it is fine.
Yeah. Okay. For OTs, constant pressure monitoring is required?
Yes, it is required.
Then DX unit is acceptable in ophthalmology?
Yes, DX unit is acceptable provided all the requirements of ISO class 6 are maintained in terms of validation, which I have just shown on the slide also when I was presenting, that various requirements of air particulate count and positive pressure, temperature, humidity, air velocity, all those things are maintained. Then with the DX unit and a AHU, see, DX unit cannot work on its own. It needs a air handling unit. The capacity of air handling unit has to be proportional to the setup which you are creating. Suppose you have a small OT, even if you have a smaller AHU capacity, it is fine.
Do we says that do we need positive pressure in burns unit?
Ideally, it is required, but it is without positive pressure also, it is fine. Nowhere in ASHRAE standards also, and ASHRAE standards, Indian standards also do not prescribe specifically positive pressure for burns unit. It is just to maintain that balance that the bacteria should not be entering into the burns center. But generally what happens is these are air changes which happen. If the air changes are more on that side, automatically positive pressure is generated.
Okay, then how to measure air changes in OT and isolation room, and which equipment is appropriate?
So air changes, that is why I have shown an example of how to calculate the air changes. Specifically, that was just to show you that air changes, for that you don't require any equipment. It is the OT area which you need to calculate. If your OT area in the example which I have shown was 3,430 cubic feet. Average velocity of supply air, which needs to be measured through anemometer. Anemometer is the equipment with which we measure the velocity of air which is supplying. So velocity of air at the diffuser level, we have to mention around 290 feet per minute. Then area of the filter is around 1.06 square feet. So CFM which comes out of 6 HEPA filters will be around 1,751. So one example I have given, I'm sure this recording will be available to you. But don't be very particular about any specific instrument, because these are nowadays being done by the vendors itself. Different vendors are available for doing this. But if you want to measure the velocity of the air, anemometer is the instrument which you need to use.
Then can we switch off the AHUs if the theaters are not in use? I think
no.
Answered.
That is why I said that specifically requirement is that at least the blower should be used on a sleep mode. That means very minimal airflow must continue in the air handling units.
Yeah.
That is done through a device called VFD, Variable Frequency Drive, which all the engineers are aware how to use it. A slightly extra expenditure, but that is worth it, because that is how you maintain an airflow continuously in the critical area, especially in the operation phase.
So fresh air exchange, what is the equation or for calculation? How, I mean, they want to know that. I think these are all again vendor related issues, but please.
Yeah, these are, most of them are vendor related and area related. If the area of the OT is a specific area, then air changes, we have specified in NABH guidelines, we have specified only 20 minimal changes, 20. Out of that, 4 fresh air changes is what we have mentioned to facilitate most of the hospitals which are located in the rural areas and in taluk level and in various other FRU level, because we have seen that it's very difficult to maintain those conditions there.
Do we need to have HEPA filters and laminar flow in cath lab?
No, there is no need of maintaining HEPA filters as well as as well as laminar flow in cath lab. You are wasting your money.
Can you shed some light on the barcode and IR tagging on biomedical waste collection bags during storage, collection, and transport? Are all laws central, or there are state laws to be complied with?
No, the law was made central, though of course this is not strictly part of facility management, but definitely I can take on this question that barcoding has been now made mandatory in 2016 biomedical waste management rules, with probably a future view to monitor it very strictly from every facility, which one is emanating, which waste emanated from which facility. That was the probably purpose of government. And it's actually a requirement from digital side to maintain appropriate records. There is no other clinical aspect involved in that.
Whether fire officer needs certified, but yes, we talked about it, that you will.
Some of the states have now come up, especially Karnataka and in Maharashtra, that you need to have, for a multi-story building which is more than 24-meter height, you need to have a fire marshal in place. Fire marshal is no officer or anybody. It is just that the person will take care of all the fire related equipment. He should be aware that these are how the fire escape routes are organized and how fire escape can take place without any problem. That training has to be carried out by that person. So somebody is made responsible specifically in a multi-storied building, more than 24 meters. These are only recommendations. And some of the states have made 40% of this complete staff should be trained in fire. So they should have a certificate.
Then you haven't mentioned lift maintenance and anything relating to that, anything to keep in mind?
For lift maintenance?
Lift maintenance and regulatory compliance for lift. You talked about the lift license, I think. And
Again, it is most of the times, 99% of the times, it is maintained through a vendor. That means a comprehensive warranty or guarantee, whatever you may call, has to be there for any lift, especially in the hospitals. Hospital lifts has a specific thing that it has to operate on a fixed speed. That is 0.75 meters to 1.2 meters per second. So this is the equation. They cannot be running very fast. They should have a facility to take the bed lift inside. All those are mandatory now. And maintenance is compulsory. The license may be of lifetime in many of the states. In some of the states, it is for 5 years. Some of the states, it is lifetime. But every lift must have a comprehensive maintenance warranty.
The other thing I think which you have to keep in mind is that the alarm, basically you must look at it from the point of view of any patient or a visitor who is stuck in the lift. So you have to see that what are your arrangements for the alarm. There has to be a telephone connection between the lift and some outside place. So normally sometimes people put people in the lift room or with the security. So one has to see all that is functional. All the things like the lift license and the other advisory to the patient should be well displayed in the lift.
Correct. Yeah.
Those things need to be there.
Any other questions?
Then do we need to have positive pressure in IVF lab? Can we put split AC in IVF lab? And if we have biosafety cabinet with laminar flow?
Yes. Yeah, it is a requirement of IVF lab, specifically that it must have a positive pressure, as well as it is just like operation theater. I would say sterile area of operation theater, it has to be maintained. The results will be better. There is no mandatory law as such governing this, or there is no mandatory requirement. But now if you see the ICMR guidelines also, it's a requirement in ICMR guidelines also, which are still not become a statutory requirement, but there is a requirement of positive pressure, at the same time laminar flow and a HEPA filter.
Please guide
That's a requirement for us.
For the AHU duct cleaning protocol.
Okay, so AHU duct need not be cleaned, by the way. It should be cleaned at the time of installation. When you need to clean it thoroughly, you should actually seal it when the work of hospital is going on, if the construction is going on. If not, if it is already there, I think it is better to leave it undisturbed. Many of the vendors nowadays have come up with robot assisted cleaning. They will show you videos and whatnot. They'll take a lot of money from you. But I think it is better not to disturb the environment. That's why we are from NABH side also, we have made it compulsory that a low flow arrangement in the AHU has to continue. In the night time, you can't just shut off the AHU. Low flow requirement has to be maintained, which obviates your duct cleaning and various other things, which is not needed.
During fumigation, is that necessary to switch off the AHU in OT? Are we switching off the AHU in fumigation process? I think the fumigation process itself needs to be.
Fumigation itself is controversial, rather to be avoided, because fumigation has its own harmful effects on the people who are doing it, especially. Yeah. So nowadays there are a lot of agents which have come in, which are very user friendly, like Virkon and various other agents which are virucidal also, as well as bactericidal. All that is fine, but AHU low flow, there is no harm in keeping AHU continue with the low flow. There is no need to shut it off. I think that again, as an engineer driven aspect, that they want you to shut it off because they're saying that you are wasting that fumigation process. But it's not true. Fumigation essentially helps you in surface disinfection. It does not help you in air fumigation. Air fumigation is out. There is no benefit of this fumigation. It just does a temporary surface disinfection, which you need to keep on cleaning again and again.
Okay, so I take it that majority of the questions have been already addressed and answered. And as we are already reached, I think, the upper time for this webinar, I'll request that any unanswered questions, please send it to caho.in@gmail.com, and we will get it forwarded to Dr. Rao, and who will be very happy to answer that. So
Yeah,
thank
I
you
will
very
be
much.
happy to.
And
Thank you.
Dr. Rao, for your wonderful presentation. And thanks again from CAHO, as well as we want you to kind of tell us about more topics. In fact, someone talked about clinical audit. Just for your information, it is already been done, and the same is available at the resource center of CAHO.in. So thank you, everyone, and
Thank you,
let's
sir.
remain in touch. Thank you.
Thank you.